10 great debut singles. Ahoy hoy everybody, and welcome to my thread response to a thread that Ross Goodall started, where he showed his 10 favourite debut singles by an act. I've seen Rob Walker and Richard McCook respond to this. I don't know if anybody else has, but thought it was a good idea. I've sort of followed on from certainly Richard in that I've decided I didn't want to duplicate any that had been mentioned by any of those three, so therefore this isn't my 10 favourite, because spoilers, Ross picked Sultans of Swing by Dire Straits, which would definitely be in my top 10, and Richard picked Keep Yourself Alive by Queen, which was definitely in my top 10. Perfect Skin by Lloyd Cole, Ross picked as well, which could quite possibly be in there. But these are certainly 10 of my favourites. They're in no particular order. Well, they are in a particular order. They're in alphabetical order, but they're not ranked according to popularity. I've also, as Rob said, found that a lot of what I thought were great debut singles were actually great second singles, which was slightly annoying. Made this a bit harder. And also I've a self-imposed rule. I didn't want to include any people who'd previously been in a band, so debut solo singles by acts who'd previously been in a band. So, you know, no Paul McCartney, no Robbie Williams. Not that they necessarily would have been in the list, but there was a couple. Alan Price, you know, is a favourite of mine, but because he'd been in The Animals, I don't consider his debut solo single to be a debut single, if that makes sense. And there was a few acts like that. As you've obviously gathered, I'm sat outside because it's a beautiful day, but it does mean I'm squinting slightly because the sun's just there, so it's just in the corner of my eye. And obviously extraneous noise, but hopefully that's not too off-putting. And without any more ado, I just said without any more ado, but there is a little bit more ado. I don't own any of these on 7-inch vinyl. I have a couple, I think, on CD singles, one of which you will see. But I have some of these, so all of them I've got on albums. Some of them I've got on vinyl, some of them I've only got on CD, some of them I've got both. So for ease, I've just grabbed CDs. But apart from one, these are all albums that these songs are on. Okay, so first up, we have a debut single by Alicia Keys, which is Fallin'. Just a wonderful song, loosely based on It's a Man's World by James Brown, very loosely. But the minute I heard it, having investigated her because she'd played a gig at Prince's celebration at Paisley Park, and I thought, well, if he likes her, she's worth checking out. And yeah, heard Falling, and that was it. I was hooked, and as many of you may know, she is my joint favourite female solo artist. But yeah, just great, you know, it highlights what's great about Alicia Keys, her piano work, her vocals. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Next up, very different track, is the debut single by Grape. So this slightly twists, because of course, you know, Shaun Ryder and his brother Paul and Bez were in Happy Mondays, so it's slightly twists where no debut singles by people who were previously in another band. But sod it, it's my rules, I'll stick to them. Well, you know, I was more considering solo acts with that. So yes, debut single by Grape, and that's Reverend Grape. I can't remember if I first heard Chris Evans play it or Danny Baker play it on Radio 1, but it was one or the other, and I was instantly hooked. Then when it was pointed out how much Shaun Ryder sounds like Grandpa Simpson, Abe Simpson, on it, that just added to the appeal. But just such a great track, the humour, the danceability, the hooks, yeah, just everything about it really I absolutely love. So Reverend Black Grape by Black Grape. And this is a track, so obviously it's for Blue Tones and their debut single Slight Return. As I've talked about before, I sort of came to the Blue Tones a bit late, so this is one of a few tracks in here that weren't the first track I heard by the artist. There's a couple more, but I was put off the Blue Tones by people saying they were the new Oasis, which, you know, musically they really aren't, but I presumed they would be because that's what they were saying. And at the time I was very anti-Oasis, being a big Blur fan. I've warmed somewhat to Oasis over the years, but still much more of a Blur man. So I didn't come to Slight Return and the rest of their catalogue till quite late, but the minute I heard it I thought, oh, what have I been missing out on? And yes, it's slightly overplayed now, but the reason it's slightly overplayed is because it is a great, great debut single. So next up is obviously one that, well, it's not obvious, but you can guess it wasn't the first thing I heard by this band. It's The Doors, and their debut single was Break On Through to the Other Side, which is the lead-off track to their debut album. I'll be honest, I was sort of wondering if Light My Fire was their debut. Apologies for the search and rescue helicopter. Okay, hopefully that's subsided enough now. Yes, I checked to see if Light My Fire was their debut, and it wasn't. And obviously Light My Fire was, you know, the track that introduced me to the Doors, as it was for many people. But Break On Through was, and I love Break On Through. It's, you know, it does perfectly illustrate the Doors sound, particularly their early sound. The, you know, pounding organ and Jim's excellent vocals. Just, yeah, it's just a great introductory track to the Doors. So next up, here we do have a CD single. This is actually the CD single that was in a box set of all their CD singles that I've got. So it is a combination of the two CD singles that came out. How many times can I say CD single? Of the two CD singles that came out for this track, compiled onto one CD single, if that makes sense. But this is Girls Aloud, Sound of the Underground, one of the greatest pop songs ever written, in my opinion. From the introductory guitar hook, great vocals from the girls, really catchy song, one I can hear a million times and never tire of. Love it. Sound of the Underground. Next we have Joan Osborne's One of Us, probably the only song of hers most people know, although I do highly recommend this album. It is fantastic. One of Us, you know, famous, you know, what if God was one of us, just a slob like one of us. Just a great, great track. She's got a wonderful voice, really catchy. It was, you know, it was a huge hit and deservedly so. It was so good. It was one of the first songs Prince ever covered on record. He'd done loads live, but the first time he ever released cover versions was on his Emancipation album, and there was 4 of them, and his version of this was one of them. Slightly changed, but pretty faithful. But yeah, just great, great song, performed wonderfully. Next, Lily Allen and Smile. So it wasn't a hit until it was re-released. She released Smile, then LDN, and then Smile was re-released, and that's when it became a hit. I can't remember what the show was, but I was watching, it was 99% certain it was on Channel 4, and it was a late night chat show presented by somebody, but I can't remember who. But Lily was a guest, and I hadn't no idea who she was. You know, didn't even know she was Keith Allen's daughter at that point or anything like that. But they played Video of Smile, and I was hooked straight away. Been a big fan ever since. Another really strong debut album that I highly recommend. But Smile, it's just such a catchy song, an uplifting song, a humorous song. Yeah, absolutely love it. 8th on the list, and it's a debut single by McFly. I know, you know, it's not cool to like McFly, but McFly are a great band, hugely talented songwriters and musicians, and their debut single is 5 Colours in Her Hair. It is the song that got me into them. I was a bit like, you know, Mum had seen them on TV and really liked them, and she's saying, "Oh, I'm sure you'd like them, I'm sure you'd like them," and I just thought, boy band, you know, not interested. But then I saw them play 5 Colours in Her Hair on something, and I was hooked. It took me a while before I had the courage, if you like, to actually buy their albums. You know, I bought Greatest Hits first, and then, you know, that was a few years later, you know. But then eventually have picked up all their albums, and have seen them live twice as themselves and once as McBusted, and they're absolutely great. Yeah, absolutely love McFly. But 5 Colours in Her Hair, that really catchy hook, you know, when you see them live and they play that, the whole arena just erupts. Again, lyrically really strong, great harmonies, great song. 9th on the list is Killing in the Name by Rage Against the Machine. For a song that can't be played on the radio, it is slightly overplayed, if that makes sense. You know, anytime there's sort of a campaign about anything, because of the chorus, well, not the chorus, but the, whatever you would call it, you know, the F you, I won't do what you tell me section. It's, you know, this is always put up as sort of a counterpoint to anything. You know, famously, it eventually reached Christmas #1 as a campaign against the X Factor. But it is a great track. You know, this whole album is wonderful again. But the Tom Morello's guitars, Zach De La Rocha's vocals and attack, and it's just a great track. And finally, we have Good Tradition by Tanita Tikaram, another track that as soon as I heard it I was hooked. Absolutely loved her, love this album. It's just, again, it's quite an uplifting track, catchy, wonderfully performed, and production by Rod Argent with Peter Van Hook. You know, it's a great sounding track. Love her vocals. It's, you know, it's not, doesn't outstay its welcome. It's less than 3 minutes long. Yeah, that's it. Good Tradition by Tanita Tikaram. So there you go, 10 great debut singles. As I say, not my absolute top 10 because of the various restrictions that I've put on it. Feel free to add yours in the comments below, or film your own response to Ross's fantastic thread. I urge you to subscribe to Ross's channel. It's a great channel, one that I always look forward when videos crop up to watching. But thank you for watching. Like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you on another video. Thanks. Bye.